of the Resource Management Young Members Group, and I'm very happy to moderate today's session. Before we begin, I'll hand over to Erica.
Thank you, Bianca. And I would like to thank you for moderating. I would like to thank the Women in Resource Management and Resource Management Young Member Group for arranging this seminar. You're part of the expert group on resource management. So thanks from the expert group on resource management, and thank you from UNECE for this initiative. And also thank you for everyone who decided to join and listen to this webinar. I think it's going to be very interesting from what I heard from the prep meetings and so on. And thank you to all the panelists for participating. We're really happy that you could take your time for this. So with that, I'll leave the word to Bianca. I just started recording so that you know that. And yeah, over to you, Bianca. And
thanks.
I'm so excited.
Me too, Erica. You actually just said something that I can just echo, just to contextualize it for those who are not very familiar with EGRM. The Women in Resources Management Working Group and the Resources Management Young Members Group, they're both under the umbrella of the UNECE Expert Group on Resource Management. And this webinar was organized by both of these working groups. But of course, many people are involved in setting this webinar up. So also Erica, Clara, Minwoo, all of you from UNECE, thank you for supporting this. Thank you for setting this up. And while I'm mentioning people, I just also want to start with Johanna Hobel, the co-chair of RMYMG, Maria Angela Capallo, the co-chair of the Women in Resource Management Working Group, and also Sandy Spork, who's also in the Women in Resources Management Working Group. Thank you so much for the dedication and for setting this up. So we echo the same thing. And of course, thank you to all of the participants here and panelists. Before we go into setting the scene, I just want to go through a few housekeeping rules with you. If possible, please keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking. And while the panelists are speaking, please use the chat for questions. We will open the floor for questions at the end, where you can unmute yourself and ask the questions directly if you like. Also, please note that today's webinar is being recorded for dissemination purposes because it's a really important topic that more people should hear of. Also, this webinar is part of a larger series exploring resource management and energy topics through different, diverse, intersectional and intergenerational lenses. Today, we will focus on renewable energy, but if you're interested in other topics of resource management, you can also join our future sessions because we got a webinar on water and gender equity coming up in September, and then also one on critical minerals and the just transition later in the year. Okay, but now let's dive a little bit into the topic and talk about why we're here today. We are here to, of course, as the title says, explore youth and gender inclusion that, can strengthen leadership, policy, and innovation across the renewable energy sector. Specifically because this is a very decisive time for the energy transition. And I would kind of briefly, before we continue with the speakers, I would like to set the scene and reflect on why this conversation matters and why now is the right time to talk about it. As we know, in this time of transition, several groups are severely underrepresented, and that's not just young people or women, but also, indigenous communities, people from the global south, low-income populations, and generally those whose voices are far too often marginalized, especially in high-level energy dialogues where impact happens, where impact is being decided, And these gaps, they're not just gaps in participation, but they're also gaps in perspective, they're gaps in innovation, and at the end, of course, also justice. And the question is, if we want a resilient and sustainable and truly inclusive energy system, then how do we embed diverse lived experiences at the heart of this decision making? And that's kind of what the webinar today is supposed to be about, to share solutions for this as well. Youth, women, and gender diverse individuals are already leading in many spaces, and I'm really, really happy to have some of these leaders here as speakers today. Our speakers are developing community-based energy projects, they're shaping international policy, innovating in technology, and all of them, they push institutions to do better. And oftentimes, unfortunately, these contributions can be seen as symbolic or secondary, and that's why this conversation today is so important. Not saying that the contributions of the speakers are secondary, but for the general populations, the narrative sometimes goes that way, and we want to change that narrative, and we want to share how to move from visibility to influence. We want to share how to move from inclusion to leadership, from tokenism to transformative participation. And this webinar is also supposed to be an opportunity for all participants to ask questions to people with, similar or even different backgrounds than they have, talk about challenges, but specifically solutions, just to share experiences and offer opportunities to ask and get to know each other a bit, which is why we also have a Q&A at the end of this session. You see the speakers cards of our speakers here today, and all of them, they're not just advocating for change, they're already making it. They're bringing perspectives from international agencies, from academic research and the private sector. And altogether, they show that gender equity and intergenerational collaboration, they're not just nice to haves, they are essential to the success of the energy transition, of course. But let's start. We're not just here to discuss the challenges, as I just mentioned them. Many of us, we know the challenges, but we want to share solutions. We want to share practices and visions for the kind of energy sector that we want to build and the leadership needed to build it. And that is actually a great way of handing it over to our speakers. We will have 2 rounds of questions. The first round is going to be more on, is going to focus more on the broader scope. I will go through guiding questions for the first round now. Dear speakers, panelists, you may choose what you'd like to focus on here. The second round later will be more specific and tailored to your personal background and experiences. So this first round is a bit more on the broader scope. If possible, I would like each speaker to introduce themselves briefly. We will aim for about 5 minutes per speaker, except, of course, unfortunately, for Josh Oxby, who will kick us off and is welcome to take a little bit more time because unfortunately he has to leave earlier, but we're still super thankful that you can make the time and speak with us here today. So you see the guiding questions on the screen. The first one is, why is it important to overcome the gender and youth barriers in the sector? Second one is, what are approaches to consider intersectionality in a meaningful way? And then the last questions focus on, what are some hidden barriers faced by youth and women who either work or aspire to work in the renewable energy sector? And specifically, how can we remove those barriers and facilitate or promote the participation of the youth and women in the energy transition? In these 5 minutes, it's impossible to go into depth with all of the questions, but feel free to choose a focus. And with that, I'll hand it over to Josh. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bianca. And thank you everyone here for hosting this really important webinar session here. We need these intergenerational dialogues where we can all come together and actually take a moment to reflect on some of the solutions, the hard-fought solutions that we've all come to gain from lived experiences and realities over the years, from the younger generations to those in more senior positions. It's really important that we have these sessions where we feel in a safe space to be able to share these points of views. So for a bit of brief introduction, I'm Josh Oxby. I'm the global focal point for SDG 7 Youth Constituency, the official youth body to the United Nations, and I'm also the youth focal point for UNDP Sustainable Energy Hub out here in New York. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone here on the webinar. I want to start just my intervention here today by actually giving a bit more of the background overview of the framing. I'm joining this as the only male panelist, and I'm deeply honoured that Bianca and Joan have selected me for this position here today. But what I want to start off by saying is that for me, the reality that we find ourselves in is deeply distressing, to be honest, and no amount of sugarcoating is really going to erase that fact. We're often all very guilty, myself included, across institutions and sectors of glossing over the lived experiences of women and young people. And we're often encouraged to always put a positive spin on deep structural issues themselves and downplay the severity of exclusion, inequality, and sort of package these solutions up as neat standalone fixes. But as we'll certainly all hear here today, these aren't standalone initiatives. These have all been hard fought and are deeply interconnected. And we need sessions like here to join these dots together. So speaking both personally and professionally, if the approaches that we've got were working, we wouldn't be on this webinar here today. So I want to kind of reframe the way in which we're thinking and are approaching these things, because the solutions do exist and the challenges themselves are well documented, as we'll hear. But so why are we still stuck in this sort of repetitive loop and not feeling that we're actually progressing much further forward? So it's not so much coming here with performative optimism, but it's actually sort of stressing the strategic urgency, the grounded accountability, and clear calls to action is what I'm really seeing. So I'm certain colleagues at the IEA, Alejandra will give a much global overview of the status of gender stark inequalities within the energy sector itself. But when I was doing a little bit of background around this, it's really staggering that not a lot of people are aware of just how severe these underpinning inequalities are. So, women, they're comprising 20% of the global energy workforce, despite accounting for 40% globally, and yet only 1/3 are AI professionals. So we're seeing as well that women in similar roles across the sector earn on average 15% less than men, and are at 2.5 higher risk of displacement due to automation. And this is, to me, is staggering. Why aren't we discussing this more? Why aren't more and more people on top of these issues themselves, especially when we turn it to the youth demographic as well? It becomes even more worrying. Young people, they stand at an unemployment rate of 65 million young people roughly around the world, and so far we're seeing that there's over 240 million young people not in employment, education, or training, with girls making up 2/3 of this total, 160 million. This roughly equates to the same as the population of Germany, France, and Belgium combined, which is beyond mind-boggling, to be quite frank, that there are such vast amounts of untapped potential out there, despite the fact that we have all witnessed just the power and autonomy that comes by empowering young women, young girls, to actually be agents of change in the energy sector itself. And again, as we're seeing this, we're looking more broadly as well and considering what does the future hold as well, because these statistics are a little bit concerning, to sort of say the least, and setting the scene. I don't want to bring a bit of the mood down on a Wednesday morning, afternoon, but at the same time, we're looking at the workforce of the future, and there's going to be 9 out of 10 jobs that will require some form of digital skills, and yet 67% of young people today are currently lacking the technical skills needed to engage with the digital economy. 1/3 of people around the world don't have access to the internet as well, despite the fact that those top 3 skills in demand right now are AI, big data, network security, and digital literacy. So why am I really positioning all of this on quite a bleak umbrella package. But to be honest, as we've seen across multiple events, multiple engagement opportunities, young people are already at the forefront of driving these innovations, of driving these changes together. We've got organizations like Student Energy that are creating agency for young people in the energy transition, that are joining the dots together, creating these skilling profiles that are attempting to overcome these gender barriers through real dedicated work streams. At the same time, we've also seen the incredible work done by the Global Women's Energy Network itself and the Global Energy Compact, Gender Compact as well, where we are overcoming these structural barriers and sort of really facing this uphill struggle to do this. Because the thing is, we don't need more pilot projects or polished frameworks to actually overcome this. You know, we need to actually reassess who we're targeting and where we are targeting our actions. So for me, when Bianca had shared these questions ahead of time and we're looking at the work that could be done to really overcome these existing barriers and potential solutions, for me, what has stood out is mainly the perspective that we are doing this at. Right now, we're targeting governments, we're targeting IGOs themselves. But if that were to be working, we wouldn't be here today, as I said before, setting this really gloomy scene. So why not sort of switch the perspective, the approach to these power dynamics that we're seeing? So why not go after mayors, go after your provosts, your parliamentarians, your chieftains? These are the people of authority in each of our lived realities. We're already seeing from the global convening of Mayors for Climate and C40 cities that it is these leaders themselves that are having real targeted action and intervention on the ground, actually changing from the bottom up the lived realities of people in cities across the global north, the global south themselves. To me, at least, these are the people that we need to be raising these deep structural issues with themselves and co-creating solutions alongside one another. As young people, we hold vast amounts of experience and knowledge that is often overlooked due to age and perceived perception bias, but we really need to be targeting these people, not because it looks good for a report, but really because it's the only way that we can actually get something to work. We need to find these smart solutions and these workarounds themselves, where we're actually moving from inaction to being proactive and meaningful actors in this energy transition itself. You know, we need to speak directly to the needs, the voices, and the aspirations of those people most affected by these stark realities themselves. And we need to really start listening, aligning, and acting where it truly counts. So apologies for giving the bit of the doom and gloom side of things with the youth agenda and the position that we find ourselves in, but it's about time we stop sugarcoating these issues for me and stop trying to repackage them and say that everything is great, because it takes away from the severity of the situation that we find ourselves in here today. So thank you so much for the time, Bianca and Joan, for allowing me to set the scene, and I'm really looking forward to the remainder of the discussions here today from colleagues.
Thanks, Josh. And first of all, let me say we're equally honored to have you with us, as you said in the beginning. And also, as we said, you're right, you're completely right. These conversations don't just belong to women or marginalized communities. They require allyship, and they require those who are willing to show up and listen and advocate for change. And your presence here helps to underscore that in the shared work. And I also couldn't agree more with your point about the power dynamics, that we need to contact the people who are shaping funding legislation and long-term policy frameworks. So thank you very much for reminding us of that, reminding us that real transformation means more than just representation. Okay, I will now hand it over to Asma. You two, please introduce yourself and choose whichever question or choose whichever field you'd like to focus on for the first round.
Thank you so much, Bianca. I'm so happy to be here with you all, and also to see my friend and colleague Josh. So we've been working, we've been working in the energy transition, especially on youth engagement, and it's great to hear his perspective. So my name is Asma. I'm from Tunisia. It's a small country in North Africa, and I currently serve as the Youth Development Delegate for Tunisia with UNDP. I've previously served as the Global Focal Point for the SDG 7 Youth Constituency, and I'm also part of IDENA Youth Council. I've been very active in the energy space and currently focusing more on the NDCs, since as you know, several countries already submitted, or they are in the process of submitting their NDC 3.0. So I'm leading the NDC youth work in Tunisia, and we called our youth inclusion and the NDC review process Youth 3.0, and in French it's Jeunesse 3.0. So yeah, and maybe I would take the question on how do we avoid tokenism in the youth space, or the youth inclusion in the energy space, to share a bit of the experience I had and also currently having. So for me, it's always in my mind that youth inclusion should not just be a one-time engagement, and that's how we avoid tokenism. We don't just bring youth to speak at an event and we say, yeah, we tick the box of youth inclusion and that's it. It should be a sustainable and continuous and meaningful engagement process. And that happens when we consider youth as co-creators and as partners. For example, with UNDP, we say youth are partners for development, and youth are not just beneficiaries of the projects or programs or the work we do. They should be included even in the design process of our programs. And that's how we would avoid tokenism. One of also the examples with IRENA. I joined IRENA as a delegate for their youth forum, the first youth forum in 2020, and I personally was very impressed by IRENA staff, the way they deal with young people, and I wanted to continue engaging with them more. And that's how the journey started. We started organizing after the forum some youth talks, and then with COVID, the version of the forum became virtual. After COVID, it got back to in person again. And what IRENA decided is to include youth in the design phase of the forum, and also afterwards the monitoring and evaluation of the forum. It first started with student energy, also MGTY, MGTY, the umbrella organization of the SDG 7 Youth Constituency and other constituencies, and then it engaged IRENA Youth Council and the council, the council includes different organizations from different parts of the world, and that's how I got the chance to become an organizer of the forum. So in that process, I personally felt how IRENA is really giving us the lead. They would even sometimes, it was funny that they would even sometimes get mad when we get back to them and say what do you think about this? Or is this good or correct to do? They would say, no, it's really in your hands. Just tell us what you need and we will do it for you. But in terms of how the program would go, the forum, it's all in your hands. So yeah, I was involved in the organization in 2023 and also 2024, as well as we will be part of the next year's forum as well. And also, yeah, 2023, 2024, 2025, and next year. And it's honestly such a privilege because we get to bring to the table what us as young people see works best for us and also for other young people. And this is what I personally consider a way for meaningful youth engagement. And when we say we have a youth advisory group, a council, or a youth reference group, this group should really be meaningfully engaged and not just to say it's a formality and that's it. And same other examples with other initiatives or organizations like Girl Up with the UN Foundation, and currently with UNDP, we are working on the Youth 3.0 initiative on the NDCs with the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Youth. So now we have an official youth task force that will take part in the entire NDC process. They took part in the launch event, and now in the regional consultations with different stakeholders. There will be like a national dialogue. Their recommendations will feed into the main NDC document, the implementation plan, the communication plan of the NDC 3.0 document for Tunisia, as well as other like efforts and national climate policy in general. So yeah, this is a bit of maybe the experience that I wanted to share, and happy to continue the discussion. Thank you. Back to you, Bianca.
Thanks, Asma. And thanks for sharing that with such honesty, what you described, you know, being invited to spaces, but then not really being listened to or given the participation is something that I think many young people can relate to, because this tokenism is often subtle, but really, really damaging. Because it creates the illusion of inclusion without any substance. But thank you for sharing how you turned that around by, you know, building credibility, creating your own space, and then actively influencing. And I'm sure that's inspiring for many of us here. It also shows the value and the importance of agency, I think. So thanks for claiming your voice and using it, and consistently and strategically. I think that's great. All right, now our next speaker, Elizabeth, please, also you.
Thank you. I'm here. Thank you so much, Bianca, and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I work for ABB, as you can see in my background. I've been in the company for very many years, nearly 29 years actually. And I've been in oil and gas business for most of the time, working with the international energy companies. And then 2 years ago, I started with the offshore wind, hydrogen, and CCS market areas. I have started 2 women's network in 2019. I started one internally in ABB Norway, and about a year and a half ago, I started one for the renewables business here in Norway. So this is my background, and I much appreciate being here. Right now, women make up just 32% of the global renewable energy workforce, and that's better than the 22% in the traditional energy, but it's still far from where we need to be. And when it comes to leadership, fewer than 1 in 5 roles are held by women. At the same time, 1.8 billion young people around the world are facing barriers. Limited access to education, to finance, and to decent jobs in this sector. These are the very people who will inherit the future we are building. But there is the opportunity. The clean energy transition could create 14 million new green jobs by 2030 and shift another 16 million workers into green, clean energy roles. That's 30 million chances to do things differently, to build a workforce that reflects the diversity of our world. And this is why I started the New Energy Women, the network for women in Norway, bringing together professionals from solar, hydrogen, and offshore wind. Our mission is to connect women across companies, spark collaboration, and expand knowledge of emerging technologies. We are helping women strengthen their voices in energy discussions and making sure they're visible as leaders in the green shift. And there's another force driving this change too, a generational shift in leadership. The Generation X leaders, which I belong to myself, are born between 1965 and 1980. We have brought us far with our independent, pragmatic, and result-driven approach. We value autonomy and structure, and we have laid the groundwork for today's energy systems. But now the millennials, born between 81 and 1996, are stepping into leadership. They bring a different mindset, one that values collaboration over hierarchy, purpose over profit, and inclusion over tradition. They're not just asking what energy we use, they're asking who benefits, who's left behind, and how can we do better. This mindset is essential for a just transition. Because if we don't act now, we risk repeating the mistakes of the past in the industries of the future. Today in energy, women still earn 19% less than men, even with the same education and experience. So this is our moment. By investing in inclusive policies, mentorship, and access to education and capital, we can unlock the full potential of young leaders, especially women, and ensure that the clean energy revolution is not only green, but just. But how do we, as senior professionals, remove these barriers that still hold young women back in this sector? I think it starts with mentorship and sponsorship, not just offering advice, but opening doors, invite young women into decision-making spaces, back them when they're not in the room. Then we need to create visible, equitable pathways to leadership, which means making promotion criteria transparent and ensuring women have access to high-impact projects and not just support roles. We must also model inclusive leadership, which means sharing our own journeys, our successes, but yes, also our failures. Because when we show that leadership is about growth, not perfection, we make it more accessible. And let us celebrate their voices, put young women on stage, let them lead panels, co-author reports, and represent your company in the public eye. Visibility matters. And finally, let us embrace intergenerational learning. Reverse mentoring can be powerful. Let young professionals teach us about emerging tech, digital tools, and new ways of thinking. These aren't just nice to haves. They are leadership strategies for a sector that must be as innovative in its people practices as it is in its technology. Because when we invest in young women, we're not just shaping careers, we're shaping the future of energy. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for not only sharing those numbers, but also kind of help us see what they mean. And I really appreciate that you focused, that you didn't stop at the problem. You kind of went further, showed us the potential, pointed out that newer generations have different leadership styles, which I think is true. I can see it in my work as well.
Yes.
But also how, there is an opportunity to reshape what leadership in this sector looks like, more collaborative, more inclusive, and value-driven as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alejandra, I'd like to continue with you, if that's okay with you.
Sure. Hi, Bianca, and thank you so much to UNECE for the invitation. Alejandra Bernal, I'm the Latin America Program Officer at the International Energy Agency, and I haven't been working full-time on gender issues, but since at least 10 years, when it was around the same time that I started working specifically on energy, I started getting involved with the gender initiatives of the places where I worked, and where they were not created, help them to create them, which was the case in the Ministry of Mines and Energy of Colombia, where I'm originally from, and I had the chance to help them start a gender initiative and a gender council. And today at the IEA, the work on gender and also on youth has been a direct mandate from our member countries. And this connects with question number one of why we should be talking about gender and youth in the energy sector. And it's just basically because they are very important consumers and producers of energy, and they should be part of the conversation. And we must acknowledge that the fact that the decision making and the people behind the decision making are so little diverse has an impact on the type of policies that are designed. So also allowing a greater diversity of actors to be involved in the policy making, in decision making in companies will also will be a way of ensuring that the policies and the decisions reflect a broader set of views. And I would like to focus this part of my intervention in something that I feel is really. Let's just wait a second. I think we need to silence a microphone. That's it.
Sorry.
And I would like to focus a bit on an element that I feel is indispensable to advance on closing this gender and youth gap, which is data, and is something that the IEA has focused a lot on producing granular data to understand what are exactly the gaps that we're talking about, and trying to go up deeper beyond the only the distribution between women and men working in energy or in renewables energy, and youth versus senior working on energy, but also looking, for example, at innovation and finding out that only 10% of energy entrepreneurs are women, or also finding that there are disparities between the amount of women in leadership positions on the energy efficiency sector, which is actually lower than the ones in the wind and solar power sector. So these type of more granular data should help both governments and companies, both to also feel motivated to find to get more granularity in their own organizations, but also to create policies and measures that could address these gaps. And right now, an issue that we're seeing is where the data is being put on the table, not only by the IEA, but many other organizations. But the problem is now how to implement actions that would help us to close those gaps, because I feel that we're a bit over-diagnosed on this. We know how little represented youth and women are, and there are more and more data sets available. I'm actually going to paste in the chat the one of the IEA for everyone to be able to consult. But now it's about what do we do, and about how are we going to move the needle and ensure that more, for example, quotas are installed in companies. How are actually the HR processes changing within companies, and how, and this I would like to go back to the point that Josh was raising, how we can also put pressure on legislators for them to force companies and organizations to change their procedures, because it's not only about the data, which is very important for the diagnosis, but about what kind of policies are being put in place. And this is also another gap that needs to be closed. And just as a reflection, now that I'm talking about data, I see that the IEA has a lot of data on gender, but that there is an opportunity to work on data about youth, that we still don't have it in our data sets. So as a follow-up of this conversation, I will for sure discuss with my colleagues at the data center to see what are the opportunities to start also collecting data about participation of youth in the energy sector.
Thanks, Alejandra, for bringing the clarity and urgency on data into this conversation. I think you said it, but I really like the sentence, we can't fix what we don't measure. So I think the role of data here is super important. And thanks for grounding the conversation in, the strategic importance of the infrastructure that we need to support it, especially transparent and aggregated data that leads to action. And now for the last person in the first round, last but not least, of course, Lena, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me here. I think it's a very nice situation for me to be discussing gender and diversity and these kind of questions when it comes to renewable energy. I am Lena Abrahamsson, and I am professor in human work science at Luleå University of Technology, and I have been studying gender issues, gender equality, or mainly gender inequality in male-dominated organizations, mostly in the industrial companies, for I think it's soon 30 years. So I've been doing this for quite a long time, many years, and I have followed the development in industry, and mostly in the Swedish industry, for over the years, and seen that there has been quite a huge progress. So if you go back for 10 years, or perhaps 20 years, or 30 years, when I started discussing this with the industrial companies, it's if I now will talk about gender and diversity, and say these kind of things, that it is important to do, it's like we have a say in Swedish. It's like crashing open doors. It's an important issue for many people, but the problem is always how to do it, and a little bit on why. At least sometimes it's a lot of talk. They are saying these kind of things, but they want it, but they don't really know how, and actually in detail what to do. So sometimes with good intentions, and often unconsciously, so even if the people in the industry, they want gender equality, but still women and men are treated differently in both large and small ways. And this is not hidden barriers. They are very obvious as soon as you open the door and go into working life. At least as a woman, you suddenly realize after a while that these are not hidden barriers. They are really visible barriers for you and for many groups in society. There are things in working life that we quite often look at. We see certain things in men and other things in women, and regardless of, when it comes to skill, regardless of what skills women and men actually have. And sometimes a skill that for a man is called one thing, and the same skill is called something different when it's a woman. So it's and usually the synonym of a skill that it's when it's connected to a man or to something that is seen as male is usually worth a little bit more and have higher status. And this is still persistent, even if I see this positive change going on in the organizations. This is still the case for many young women coming to industry. So this is the problem, that we have the old patterns still, and they are not old. They are today. So when I talk to the industrial companies and trying to explain why they need to change, because they usually talk about, well, we need more women because we need more people they need more people to recruit. So this is the first thing. But I say, yes, of course, that's true. But you also need to remember that gender equal and more this kind of inclusive, diverse organizations. So it's not only about gender, but I talk about gender. But this kind of gender equal organization, they function better. So this is my message for today. It's that gender equal organizations function better, and we heard that from the previous speakers as well. And I have seen in my studies that gender equal organizations, they are more flexible and have more capacity for change and innovation and learning. Gender equal groups or teams, they can function if they are treated, if good leadership and the good groups, they can be much more flexible and creative. And this is of course part of a resilient and sustainable work and organizations. But it also a basis for efficiency, safety, and quality in the function of the companies, and you will get better function of the technology. But as we just heard, it's still men who design, mostly men who design technology and organizations. And this is in many sectors. And therefore, it's usually men's experiences and desires that are that the new technology is based on. And this means that since we have this gender unequal situation in society, this means that the men's perspectives are not gender neutral. And they are not universal, even if they are presented like that, they are not. And this means that the design of the technology it risks to be incomplete, or perhaps miss the targets, or perhaps even wrong, malfunction. So this means that working with gender equality is not only a question about it must be fair and democracy and these kind of things. It's actually and it's not soft questions. It is hard. It's actually how you earn money in industry. You will get better function companies, organizations, and technology. So this is one of my main messages. And the other one is that because it's always it usually, as I said, it's good intentions, but sometimes you say that we need to include more women in the development of technology because we will get better technology. Yes, I said yes, better technology, but they mean that we will get more softer, more humane, more sustainable technology if we bring in more women. In a case, yes, it is, but not because the women are more softer, humane, and good in all kind. It's because that we will have a more diverse group. So sometimes we confuse this, that we think that women will design technology in a special way, and I don't think so. They will just bring in their perspectives and their positions in the development of technology systems. And it's a very tricky way to walk when you discuss these kind of things. But a broader spectrum of ideas and methods and perspectives, it's very, very important. And I think here we can have gender theories and gender equality as a very important tool to do this. So we'll not function, because many industrial companies, they just focus on how to get more women into the industry, how to recruit more women, how to make them want to stay in our organizations. And yes, that's good, but if you have a male-dominated organization and you only focus on the minority, then you have perhaps you miss the target, because if you really want to change the workplace culture, the organizational culture, I say that you need to work with the majority, meaning that you need to work with the men to change. So I would say, so part of the solution will be to focus on having a more diverse and broader groups working together. And to be able to have these kind of groups to work together, you need to actually change the organization's perspective on gender. So you need to have a gender equal organization when it comes to how you value women and men, and not see them as different, but see them as equals. So you need to understand how to take. I would say that a gender equal organization is an organization that gender is not a big thing. It's the ongoing everyday practices and processes are around job, not about gender. So I think I stop there and leave the floor for, I think we have much more questions later on.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Lena. Thank you for bringing in this long view and also reminding us that change, while slow, is real. But I think I want to mention, I think the fact that we're having this conversation today, this openly across generations, across sectors itself is already also a sign of progress. And as you said, that was not the case 30 years ago. And I really want to highlight that, of course, that difference didn't happen by accident. It happened because people like you, women, different people, allies, they pushed, persisted, and often kicked doors open. And I think that really highlights this idea to know that each generation doesn't only do a service to themselves, but they really do a service to the next generation as well. In terms of intersectionality and inclusivity, and more than ever, efficiency as well, as you said. So just wanted to highlight that because it's a great way, it's a great time and point to say it. Kicking doors open is really, really important for the coming generations. And I think I speak for everyone when I say a big thank you to all of the previous generations who did that. Okay, thank you for the first round. I think those reflections were excellent. Now we go into the second round, which is going to be a bit more a focused discussion, where I'll ask each of you a targeted question more based on your expertise. And again, like in the round before, please remember to keep your responses to about 5 to 6 minutes. I think Asma, unfortunately, already had to leave. So did Josh. So actually, now that I think of it, you can take 7 minutes if you want to, because there were less people in the second round. Alejandra, I would like to start with you. Your work within the IEA Gender Task Force looks both at data and practice, as you already kind of highlighted before. My question to you is, have you noticed with the data, have you noticed any noticeable differences in leadership styles tied to gender or personality? And tied to that question, of course, also is how can young professionals balance authenticity with expectations? I think we'd all be very interested in your insights there.
Thanks, Bianca. And I would start by saying that beyond the energy data, which is something that is publicly available, the IEA has also tried to work inside the organization on changing a bit the paradigm and also understanding how to better promote women leadership and having more women in general as part of our workforce. And one of these initiatives is called the Careers in Energy, and it's precisely designed for the IEA staff to have access to an open conversation with female energy leaders. And we only have as speakers female energy leaders, but the conversation is open to anyone, because as Lena was saying, it's really important to engage men in this conversation. I think that a problem throughout the years has been that the conversations of gender has been taking place like in silos and in woman-only spaces, and that really doesn't help. And we have had the chance of hosting amazing speakers, former ministers, the former minister of Kenya, a former commissioner of the African Union, a senior advisor to the president of Brazil. And it's always very inspiring to hear them, because you can witness how different like female leadership styles are. I feel that in general, we're quite used to very masculine leadership styles. And I think it's very important for everyone, not only for women, to start getting used and acknowledging that is not one only way of being a leader, and that being kind can also be an attribute of a very good leader. And then speaking slowly or more softly can also be very powerful and can, again, be an attribute of a leader. And I'm part of this generation that Elizabeth was describing, the millennials that are starting to stepping into leadership. And for me personally, it has been a very important process to start getting a personal take on what is that being a leader is about, and how can I build a leadership, like my own leadership personality, without having to give up some of the attributes of my personality, without having to be expressive or sometimes a bit sentimental, which I feel that is a struggle that is not only me who has it, but many other women that sometimes feel that I have to be super tough to be respected by others. I feel that this exercise of the careers in energy has been really successful. We have had very good feedback from colleagues across the agency, and I think that is definitely helping also managers to understand that they need to appreciate and understand how to empower their teams in a different manner, because not all leaders behave the same, and it's not exactly the same to work with women than men. That for sometimes I think it was just a given, but because we were first trying to reach some kind of equality, but it doesn't work either to treat everyone in exactly the same way. And if you talk to managers, you will hear once and again that they do feel that sometimes their female officers are way more shy, have a harder time in intervening in meetings, in raising the hand, in raising the voice, that are sometimes overshadowed by male colleagues. So I feel that this reflection about what is to be a female leader has had multiple purposes here at the IEA. And I would also like to talk very briefly about our mentorship program. Mentorship was also brought by Elizabeth as an example of initiatives that could work and that can help with this intergenerational collaboration. It started 2 years ago, and it's not only for women, it's for men and women. But we also have seen it has been very helpful, particularly with women that are or have just become mothers or planning to become mothers, because that's again another issue that is often neglected, which is that it's not only about a gender gap, but a maternity gap. And on that, we feel that particularly the exchange between more junior female officers and more senior female officers has been really helpful and successful. And in general, mentorship exercises, I think that are a very valuable tool, and that they should definitely be promoted in more organizations.
Thanks, Alejandra. You touched upon so many points. I think I agree with you. I think it's super important to challenge the idea that there's only one way to lead. I really like that you kind of shared what different leaders you talked to, and how that inspired your work as well. And that at the end of that, the outcome was that, of course, there's not just one way to be a leader. And my thought when we were speaking was that, of course, the energy transition is seen as this technical shift by everyone, but I really agree with you that it needs to be a cultural and institutional shift as well, and then redefining leadership is going to be part of that transformation. Thank you very much. Okay. next speaker, Lena, my question, well, based on your academic work, my question to you would be, how do you think can intergenerational and gender equity in sectors like, for example, the mining sector contribute to social sustainability? And also, are there any examples from the extractive industries that offer lessons for renewables, maybe?
Yes, I can say like this. If we go to the mining sector that I have been following for not 30 years but 20 years, I have seen that there is clearly much more women mining workers, and also much more women working as engineers and managers. So there has been a huge development when it comes to the number of women, but also to when it comes to better workplace culture. They are all, when we do interviews, they are all very clear about that the workplaces for both the engineers, the geologists, and other experts, but also for the mining workers, it's much better. Of course, there is still concrete problems for women, as we just heard, exactly like that. A lot of women experience that kind of problems, but the positive words dominate when we do interviews. They really want to emphasize that things are much better now, and it's better work environment, and it's higher competence requirements, and especially this kind of new green competencies that are required more and more in the mining sector as well, not only in the energy sector but also in the mining sector, and but also we can see that these positive trends. I would also like to emphasize that it's an effect of quite big gender equality development and measures that have been done on a higher level in the society. So it has made it's possible for women and men to act more gender equal, both at home and in working life. So this is important to remember, because when I talk to mining companies from different countries, and they are saying, yes, it's of course you can do this in Sweden, but we can't do this in Zambia or because there are rules that forbid women to do different things like that. And we have had that kind of rules in Sweden for a couple of decades ago, and we have taken them away, but the patterns, they are still there. So we need to work with the old ideas, and that's why I emphasize on the to work with the men and to work with the workplace culture, and actually try to change the workplace culture, not only recruiting women but also change. So we see that there are both positive signs but also some problems remaining. And we see, for example, the ideas that the real mining worker, he's a man, he is big, brave, strong, and he works underground with manual work. So we see these kind of ideas that are whatever profession we're talking about, this kind of professional identity can hinder for other groups to work in the organization. So the workplace culture can be quite conservative and lag behind development. And what we have seen in the mining industry, we have seen kind of paradoxical resistance towards new technology, towards safety, gender equality, women miners and women in general, and also the green awareness. So at least in the beginning, when the changes started, there's a lot of resistance towards anything new. But we've seen also that things are happening. It's going. So these are just in the beginnings, and after a while, if you're talking about the workplace culture is lagging behind. So after a while, just like you are in a jet lag, after a while you can actually come to the same time zone as the technology. So the workplace culture can come to the same, to get a little bit more modern. And this is what we have seen in the mining sector, that it will function better and better. But the lagging can create problem here and now, and therefore it needs handled. And so the question is how to do this, and how to handle the problems at the same time as you recognize the positive trends. So this is the challenge. And this is what we are doing research on in the mining sector. And I think some of the things we have seen can perhaps be discussed also in the renewable energy sector. I think I stopped there.
Unfortunately, you have to stop there. But yeah, no, of course, you pointed out that there's resistance, and I agree, we all feel it. But also, thanks for raising that, of course, it's important to push through that resistance, and that resistance is also going to translate to societal change. Societal change translates to industry change and vice versa. And, it's really important, as you said, to keep in mind that industries don't operate in this vacuum. And, I think the cultural progress, or the progress in workplace culture, is also something that each one of us can also take home, because there's agency for all of us to do that. I already have some ideas for my workplace now. Thank you. And now, Elizabeth, we come to you last but not least. You have a background in offshore wind. So from your leadership role in offshore wind, what would you say makes this sector particularly well positioned to break leadership and gender barriers? And also, if you have the time, what would be some concrete actions that senior management can take to foster this inclusion? I know you touched upon it a little bit earlier, but I'm super interested in hearing more about it.
Okay, good. Yeah, so, well, I must say I started in offshore wind about 2 years ago, and I came to my first conference in this domain in Stavanger, the energy capital of Norway. I entered the conference room. I saw about 350 people, and I must say 95% were men. That was quite disappointing. And I also recognized quite a few of them from the oil and gas business. And I figured, okay, so we're going to oil and gas 2.0 with the same hierarchies and the same informal networks where decisions are made, and also on the golf course and wherever people hang out together. And that was my main motivation for starting this women's network in Norway, because I wanted to make sure that we attract more women to this space. But having been at this conference and then started working in the business, I do see a big difference from oil and gas, because many of these companies are brand new companies, and they don't have the structures, the old structures where people have worked, kind of like I have in ABB for many, many years, and they know each other from a long time back. I see a lot of new, for instance, project developer companies that have people from different types of backgrounds. And also compared to oil and gas, you need a more variety, diversity in education and experience in offshore wind than you do in oil and gas. So you also have, for instance, people from ESG background. In oil and gas, you have a lot towards stakeholder management, towards government funding and stuff like that, and which are roles where women are more often found. So I see in offshore wind, I see a more diverse educational or experience background, which allows more women. I see also a more focus on the ESG part, where you also find more women. I see also that we do have kind of, I was a bit disappointed at first because I thought people working in renewables had a kind of a different motivation than people in oil and gas. I thought maybe if you work in renewables, you kind of think your job is about something more than just getting your pay every day because you're actually contributing to making a better world. Some people do, other people don't. It's a big variety in people's motivation. Some people work in the energy transition because they think it's a place you can make more money. At least initially, that's what people thought. I don't think they think that anymore. It's kind of been a rough path the last few years. But there is hope out there. I see women being attracted to this type of businesses. For instance, in hydrogen, in green hydrogen, there's a much higher percentage of women than in offshore wind. Solar, even more than in hydrogen. So I think it's quite positive. And in my network, the New Energy Women, we are getting so many new members all the time. People want to join and be at our events and connect and get to know each other. And when it comes to the second part of your question, Bianca, some concrete steps that I mentioned, a few of them in my pitch. I think like also what was mentioned by Alejandra is that you have to measure things. So you have to set goals for diversity. So clearly one task for improving your diversity mix, also when it comes not only gender, but culture, sexual orientation, age, handicaps, all that, you have to have goals and they have to measure them. How are we doing on our KPIs? And as we see in ABB, it's very effective if you put those KPIs related to people's bonuses. So for instance, we're setting that 30% of our new hires should be women, which sounds low, but we have a 20% women rate in our line of business because only 20% of women apply for the engineering schools for automation and electrification. It's really hard to attract more than the average. So just attracting 30% is already 10% more than the average. So also inclusive recruitment practices is very important. That you have, for instance, the job ads can be written in a way that attracts more women, and not only saying women are encouraged to apply. You know, that's what we did in the 80s. That doesn't help anymore. I have to make sure how your language is used. For instance, there's a lot of male-dominated or masculine words. For instance, we're looking for an aggressive salesperson to play a strong in an aggressive market. I don't know, things like that. Be aware of the language that you talk about and also promote benefits of the job that are important for women. For instance, health benefits, health insurance, opportunity to have your workout done. If there's a sports center in the area, you have maybe a license, you can go more cheaper. Things like that, which women find to be important. Leadership programs, flexible work policies. We're really good at that in ABB. We can work from home 2 days a week and then stay at the office, preferably 3 days a week, for instance. Some places, not everywhere, but at least in Norway, that's how we do it. So there's a lot we do to accommodate the life challenges of specifically families with smaller children. Yeah, so I have quite a few things that I'd like to point out. The main, maybe what I worked a lot with is role models. It's very important for an organization to have strong role models that are willing to share how they have reached their positions. I myself had a very important role model and she did a lot for me and she had a very high position in ABB and she helped me also move before we had open job policies, which we have now. She was very helpful and came with advices, and I know she spoke well of me to people, so I advanced in my career. And that's one of the things I have to think. We have to be role models for each other, whether you're young or you're a senior person. We have to help each other and also be inclusive in our hearts and really think well of each other and care and share.
I agree. I agree, Elizabeth. It's a community should be at the heart of everything. And, you know, I think the experience that you talked about in the beginning, you know, being the only women in the room, I think that's something that a lot of people can resonate with. But, you know, you created that network to bring others in, you know, for community, as I said in the beginning. Thank you very much to all of the speakers. Thanks for staying here. Thanks for taking the time to talk about your experiences, to focus on solutions, to raise so many important points today. I'm happy that we made it to in time for a little Q&A session as well. So all the people participating here, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself, or write your question into the chat. I mean, we already got 2 amazing questions in the chat, but I'll ask first if anyone from the participants would like to ask something directly. Or as maybe the participants think about the question, we can start with the chat. So there's the first question, which is, what are your insights about engaging in K-12, which is elementary and secondary years, actions to change the status quo of women in leadership of resource management? You know, if any one of you has a thought to this or would like to answer, please take the floor. Yes, please, Elizabeth.
What we see working in our community here are, again, role models. And for that age group, it's the influencers. You see this age group, I have teenagers myself, they look at TikTok all the time. We have to have strong influencers talking well about the importance and the fun parts of taking math classes, doing engineering work, for instance, talking about technology. We've had in Norway, she won a prize this year, actually for last year, I guess it was in this year, about she was an influencer for women in the, hydropower, electrification. So she was out in the field doing maintenance on transformers and all kinds of stuff like that. And she had thousands of followers. And all she wanted was to create interest for that type of job. So that is just an example, but I guess that's a higher level. I think you have to have it in lower level schools. Another thing is getting the companies, technology companies, in the classroom, being able to talk about what they do and the type of fun things they do, for instance, robotics, AI, which is attractive for young people today. I'll leave it there to have other people talk as well.
Thanks, Alejandra. You're second in row.
Thanks, Bianca. I would just say I do think it is important to start working on that in secondary and elementary education. But I would just say that it's important to identify that the participation of women in STEM, it is not as complicated in like everywhere. For example, the United States, Brazil has also made a lot of advancement while other countries are really, really behind. So I do think it's important, but also to acknowledge that the problem of women representation in the energy sector really varies from country to country, but even sometimes within a country, from one region to another, or from one sub-industry to another. So just to go back to the point that is important to identify where the access to STEMs, the STEM careers is still really a challenge, to see if that's where the focus need to be put.
Thanks, Alejandra. I think, Nyasha, you're probably raising your hand for another question, if I'm not wrong. So before we move on to another question, I see that Lena and Asma both have their hands raised. So I'll want to give them the opportunity to answer the first question first, if that's okay. So Lena, please.
Yes, I would say that in many countries there is a system that we when the kids are small, they are very open to everything and interested in everything, and they have quite fun in school, and they work with a lot of gender good way of making both small boys and small girls understanding that they are that they have equal opportunities in life. But as soon as they start, when they get a little bit older, they have to choose in school. They have to choose some special subjects, and they usually, this is during a period when they are quite sensitive to what the friends are saying and what they see in social media, and this is not a good way of getting more gender equality, because they usually choose the girls usually don't choose STEM subjects because they feel that it is not exactly what I like to do. So just to removing so this is one of the barriers that we talked about earlier, to force very young people to choose the path in life too early. If you wait when they are adult, they will choose more from interest, but when they choose when they are very young, they are very sensitive to all these kind of, it's not a free choice, and we need to work around that somehow. I understand this is the school system, but if we can open up a little bit more so people can don't have to choose everything so early.
I highly agree with that. I would choose so differently. Thank you, Lena. And Asma, earlier when we went through the second round of questions, I didn't see you in the list of participants, and I see you now. So if I skipped you, please excuse me. So if you want to answer this first question in the chat, of course, feel free to answer it. And if there's anything else you would like to add that you couldn't say earlier, also please take your time.
Thank you so much, Bianca. Yeah, sorry, I had to drop. I think it's a very crucial question because I personally believe always if we want to make a change, it needs to happen early on. Like it's same as the concept in terms of health. They say like preventing yourself from a disease, it's like early on is better. And I think same should be applied when we talk about like the energy transition and empowering women. Another way like to empower the younger generation, especially girls, is through mentorship. For me, I served as a mentor before for Technovation, which is like a competition for girls in STEM and technology. And I think such kind of like models or initiatives is very crucial for young girls. There are also some other like initiatives that exist around the world. Some are like in certain countries and some are global, but I personally haven't seen such kind of initiatives in the energy space, and I personally wanted to work on something like this, like how do we empower young girls in the energy transition so they can know what energy means, and all aspects in terms of like knowledge and also practical skills. For me, I've organized a bootcamp for the Middle East and North Africa with GirlUp at the UN Foundation on Energy, and it was like such a great initiative. We invited like female leaders from UNECE, from UNIDO and IRENA, and it was such a wonderful exchange between like girls and these female leaders. And I believe like such kind of like models should be like implemented more widely and more frequently. Like even such kind of discussion that we're having now, it would be great to engage more younger like females who also like have like the potential and a say in these discussions. So yeah, I would love to see UNECE or other like organizations working on such kind of initiatives, and I see it even my sister, like she became active at a very young age, and she joined like an exchange program at the age of 14, and now she's like interested in aerospace, sustainable aerospace design and renewable energy. And yeah, I see it to be like very inspiring how to empower someone at a young age, and then it would lead to a bigger impact when they get older. Thank you. Back to you, Bianca.
Thanks, Asma. You just inspired a few ideas that I might pitch to UNECE or the expert group on resource management later. Very important points there. We also have a question from the audience. Nyasha, please ask your questions. Feel free.
Thank you so much. Sorry if I did not get it, but I think I heard Lena speak about how how the mining industry is being so resistant in terms of balancing gender in those leadership positions. So my question is, sorry if I missed it, but I wanted to understand what exactly is the actual problem. Is it really the gender, the organizational gender perspective? Is it our legislation? What exactly is the main cause of this so that we address the root cause of the problem, I guess?
Should I answer? The problem from my perspective, is that usually the problem why the resistance is the problem with the resistance is that they resisted gender equality. They were against gender equality, they were against women, they were against everything new. So the problem was perhaps, of course, it was a problem that they were against women. Yes, it was a problem, but the problem was that they were against everything new. So the workplace culture was a culture built on resistance. They wanted to keep everything as it was. So it was not a dynamic workplace culture. It was not innovative. It was not creative. It was just to keep everything as it always have been. That there was against change generally. So that was one of the problem, and this is why the mining companies wanted to have more this kind of gender equality, not only the number of women, but also the rest, to have a better workplace culture that are more open, diverse, a broader spectrum of ideas. That was what the mining company wanted to have, and that's why we were engaged as researcher and worked together with them for many years. This is what they wanted to have: better safety, better creativity, better innovation capacity. That was what they wanted to have, and they saw gender inequality, this kind of qualitative gender inequality, was the main problem. And we have seen that it's possible to change, and they have come quite far during the last 10 years, at least during the last 5 years, quite a lot, both in when it comes to the possibilities for women, but also for getting this kind of more diverse workplaces.
Very true. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we're at the end of our webinar, but before I wrap it up, I thought it would be great if we could take a photo with everyone. If everyone, also the participants, could turn on their cameras so we can take a little screenshot that we can use and also remember all the people who participated. I think that would be great. So I'll give everyone a minute to turn on the cameras. Thank you very much. I know it's always terrible when the moderator asks to do that without preparation, but everyone looks fantastic, so there's nothing I need to worry about. Okay, we need 4 more people with cameras on, and then I have the first full screen thing. Okay, I think we can do it this way as well. Just give me one brief second. to take the snapshot. Okay. Everyone, please smile. Right. Perfect. The screenshot was taken and it's saved. And now I would like to wrap it up briefly and say thank you to everyone who participated, everyone in the audience, everyone who helped organize, and of course, the panelists. We heard a lot, but not enough. So that's the problem. But I really like that we focused a lot on pathways, from breaking through tokenism, building networks, and redefining what leadership looks like. Each one of you brought very valuable experience, insights, and paths to solutions. So I hope that everyone here leaves the space not just inspired, but empowered with new ideas how to, serve our generations and also the next, to continue opening doors and lead authentically. Also, you see a QR code and a link there. If you are interested in more of these webinars and in the work that UNECE is doing, please subscribe to the newsletter. I can promise it's no new newsletter that comes every day. Like every time it comes, I think every couple of weeks. It's got really valuable information about super interesting webinars and events and just generally the work that UNECE does. So I can really recommend it. And with that, thank you very much to everyone participating. I hope you have a great day and see you next time, hopefully.